All right, welcome guys. Today we have a special guest, Ben Leybovich. I started my journey in real estate, to say it like that, with Bigger Pockets, and Ben stood out of everybody down there for me because he was closer. He was speaking my language, let's put it that way. He was speaking the truth based on what I knew at the time. I tried staying in the shadow and doing deals on a smaller scale, but on the same time, I still appreciate and follow through Facebook and other means. So Ben, it's one of my mentors. He doesn't know yet. I'm just going to call it right now. He's the principal of both Whitehaven Capital and Whitehaven Construction. Ben oversees new apartment acquisitions, asset management, and investor relations. Since 2006, he has been a principal in full cycle transactions totaling 300 million. And as we were talking, he said, that's an old thing that I'm reading right here. It's probably totaling a lot more than that at this point. Ben attended the University of Cincinnati for both undergraduate and graduate studies. At this point, Ben is a syndicator, as far as I know, a full syndicator. Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, and welcome.
Thank you so much. I am pleased to be sitting down and talking with you. This will be fun. Yeah, a lot of that information is outdated. I stopped keeping track. It's hard because at some point it stops meaning, because at some point you are chasing performance that's unattainable. So then you stop paying attention to dollars and units and all that stuff, right? It just becomes, how good can I be at the thing that I do? And that's really much more difficult to measure. So that's the place that I'm in now. I wish I could tell you it's fun. It's not. It's a lot of hard work.
It's a lot of
But
work.
I'm sure you'll have good questions. So
I agree, it's a lot of work. I want to dial down a little bit and explain the people that are watching some of the private conversation we just had, how we met through Bigger Pockets in 2016. When I started looking into Bigger Pockets, we talked a little bit here and there very briefly. You're a very busy man. I remember you starting a university for one point that I paid for, and I never took not even one class. I was busy, everything was messed up. I didn't quite understand the platform. And then all of a sudden, here we go, Ben took off. You got crazy busy, and you told me right up front, dude, I'm not mentoring anybody. I don't want to, I don't have time. I'm so busy right now. So I appreciate it. And I was still trailing from behind, watching your deals and the analysis. And I remember coming across one of your classes when you were talking about syndication, and you created your own spreadsheet. And you said it at the end, and I was like, oh my God, I know this guy. I'm going to be able to get my hands on that spreadsheet. So at the end, Ben says, yeah, and for everybody out there, just so you know, I'm not giving this crap away. I'm keeping it for myself. So I'm like, oh my God, like you've done
well,
so.
there's a good reason for that. There's a good reason for that. A good underwriting program is inherently what I call unstable, because underwriting factually is just financial engineering. And when you're doing that, you have to make certain assumptions. But there is a chain link relationship between assumptions, one to the other. So a lot of times, if you imagine aspect A in a certain way, you have to remember that it's going to have an impact on aspect B, aspect C, and aspect D. And you have to manually change them. You can automate a lot of that, but in doing so, you are watering down the effect of the underwriting, what I found. And I don't want to be responsible for the assumptions you make and what you remember or don't remember to reconfigure in my spreadsheet, which is inherently unstable, which is why I don't put that out. It's for my internal use and Whitehaven. And now we don't even use mine anymore because Sam, my partner, Sam Grooms, he devised a better, cleaner mechanism to do this. And so now internally we just use his.
Oh, that's awesome. I started with Michael Blank's calculator spreadsheet. That's what I did. That was the only one I knew. And then I went to CCIM, to the Commercial Real Estate Institute, and they have their own as well. I ended up getting theirs, and it's the same as Michael Blank's. There are a couple other people that I came across that they had good spreadsheets. Now, I understand the process behind it. Back then, I did not understand anything. And I was like, how is this guy assuming that the insurance on that specific spot is going to be this much in the next 5 years? That was like, it just blew my mind. And now with these times, I live in Florida and I'm trying to get car insurance right now because I just moved. They hit me with a rate that is more than I'm paying my car payment on a car. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm buying this car all over again from you. I'm like, this is like mob style. I don't even want to. How do I underwrite buildings in this circumstance?
Listen, there's a lot of insurance companies that are shutting doors in Florida and in California because of all of the natural events. It's becoming very difficult. And there's a lot of companies that are creating subsidiaries to specifically service those markets to limit the exposure of these subsidiaries on the rest of the company. It's a real issue. You're not going to get away from it. If you want to live in Florida, and clearly a lot of people want to live in Florida, you're going to pay what you got to pay. But the insurance costs are a problem. That said, that's one of the reasons I love investing in Arizona. It's interesting. So we have an asset under contract, literally as of yesterday. It's 240 unit community, and we have enough in our portfolio to look at our average cost across every line item to estimate for the purposes of underwriting, this is what it's going to be. So we assumed that our insurance cost is going to be $280 per door, $285 per door, something like this, which is a lot cheaper than the majority of the country because in Phoenix, in the valley, we don't get natural disasters. We don't have mudslides. We don't have hurricanes. We never get any freezing pipes, okay, busting and flooding everything. We don't have any of that stuff. So the insurance in the valley has always been a lot less expensive, but recently, over the last 2 years, it has really gone up. So I remember 4 or 5 years ago, we would underwrite routinely insurance in $165 to $180 per unit range on these 100 plus unit complexes. It's easily $50 to $100 more expensive. But just received a note yesterday, as a matter of fact, that the insurance agent is underwriting, has a quote of $208 per unit, where we assumed about $280. He's got a quote of $208. So there is a big distinction between buying a property in Texas, in California, in Florida, versus Arizona, versus Phoenix. There's a lot of distinctions and a lot of reason I like doing business here, but this is one of the big ones because this can catch you by surprise. If you're not careful, insurance costs can be a disaster. That and taxes, property taxes, which is another conversation, but it's also a very, very good line item for us here in Arizona for a number of reasons. But anyhow, I'm off on the tangent. You started down the line with insurance. I'm telling you, yeah, in Florida, it's a big problem. In Phoenix, not so much.
I'm glad you mentioned because I was going to ask you about the deal that you're running right now. So this is the deal that you have on the contract right now. This open, or it's going to be soon open to the public?
Yeah, so it's going to be open. It's going to be, I think we'll roll it out 10 days, 14 days, something like that. It's a typical deal for us in terms of what we usually buy. So it's plus or minus 2000 vintage. Let's call them core plus assets. And what we do is we spend, just to give you an example, this one, the CapEx budget is $10 million. So that's going to be $27,000, $28,000 on inside of the units, plus another, I don't know, $2 million on the community amenities. So that's what we typically do. We used to buy 80s product. We don't do that anymore. We cycled all of that out of the portfolio. And now we just buy 1995 through, I don't know, 2008, 2010, maybe 2012. Essentially, I want something with really good bones and a good location that I can really compete with Class A new construction, but be at a lower basis than the new construction. That's the whole idea behind it. And so 2000 vintage It's young enough so that there isn't any functional obsolescence, and you get the tall 9-foot ceilings, and you get the washer and dryer inside the house, and you get all of that decent layouts. You got nice square footage, all of that, right? That you didn't get in the 80s, let alone the 70s and the 60s. But you don't have any mechanical obsolescence, functional obsolescence, any kind of unit functional obsolescence on one hand. On the other hand, if it hadn't been touched in 23 years, then it's time to upgrade it. It's time to rip everything out and make it like new. And because you're starting with good bones, you're starting with nice square footage, nice layout. If you do the right kind of renovation, you're practically ending up with essentially new construction asset when you're done. And that's our MO. That's what we do at this point in time, what we've been doing for a couple of years now.
That's great. Thank you for clarifying that. That's awesome. Any new investor out there, I believe this deal is going to be for accredited investors only, right? That's what you're looking at.
Yes, everything we do is 6C accredited. Yeah.
So I want to make sure that I put it out there just so people know that's what you have. Whitehaven Capital. Do you have a website directly for this where you're going to post the deal, or?
Yeah, you get to it from our website, whitehaven.com, www.whitehaven.com. And then there's a button to click for the available opportunity, and that'll take you to the landing page for this specific deal. When it goes live, we haven't put it out yet.
I'm glad you're putting it out here because I'm going to put it out there as soon as I can. I do this podcast to make sure that I catch the 10 days, so I'm not after it.
Millions and millions of people listening and watching.
Yeah,
right? The millions
of people. I want them to
tens of millions of people listening and watching.
Man, I think I started this podcast about 6 months ago, more or less 3 months when I became a little bit serious. So I think I had for weeks and weeks, I have 20 subscribers. It recently caught up to over 1,000, and it goes over and over because I start paying for marketing and they're pushing it in different groups and other things. Sure. So a marketing company is taking care of that. Me personally, out of my own power, man, I couldn't touch more than 100 people. I think organically I reached 128. And then people were like, that's it, Silvius, we had it with you, bro. Stop texting. So I'm like, okay, I won't spam you anymore. Thank you. Excuse me. I didn't want to. I just wanted to create a vehicle that I can first and foremost bring some people up front that have the knowledge and expertise. And secondly, when you're the high school guy, the most famous in the high school, and then the little guy has a party, the little guy gets known too. Just on the shade of the big guys. So I'm piggybacking a little bit on that. And that's what
absolutely. I think that's the right way to do it. I think you're absolutely right. I think once upon a time, as an entrepreneur, I realized there's a system to doing this, right? If you have a question that you yourself are trying to understand something, I think it's fair to assume you are not alone. There are other people asking themselves the same or very similar set of questions and trying to figure out similar kind of answers. So as an entrepreneur, as you find the answer, put it out there. 9 people will take it for free. 1 person will pay you. And that's the essence of being in the business of an entrepreneurship. So I think you're doing it the right way. I would also be doing it still. I have just asked Ben why. Boy, that's 1,000 years ago. I had CFFU, that's the course you mentioned, Cash Flow Freedom University. That's a long time. I shut it down a long time ago because the way CFFU came about is I had enough units in the portfolio. And I created an answer for that question, a very personal question for myself. And I was proud of myself and I was happy for myself. And the next step was, okay, can I help somebody else get there too? That was going from 0 to 1. But when you are sitting at 0, 1 is all that you can see. You can't see past 1. It is all you can see is getting from 0 to 1. And when you get to 1, there's a point, a period of time, I should say, of elation that you experience of having accomplished a thing. Okay? I was at that point, And I said, why don't I just write a book? Eventually, that book became a course. Eventually, I recorded the MP3 voice files for it. And I think I sold it for $200 or $300 back then. We're talking about a decade ago, okay? Because there was nothing new in it. It was literally, here's what I did, step by step. That's it. You can find this information on BiggerPockets. If you spend 4 months there, you can find all of the information. I'm not opening the window to Europe. This isn't what that is. I'm just telling you, this is how a little guy with a problem can manufacture a solution to that problem. And if you want me to expedite the process for you, I'm happy to do it. It's going to cost you a couple $100. I think it's fair because I did put my time into it. So I think it's fair. Would it have been fair for $3,000? Absolutely not. But for a couple of $100, sure, it's fair. But then when you get into the high level stuff, when you get out of the widget stuff and you get into the stuff with 7 figures and millions of income and things like that, those aren't questions that you can find answers to just anywhere. And for that, I have to charge. But I don't want to charge. So I got to that point because I came through the ranks as an entrepreneur, as a teacher. I've always been a teacher. It's like, it's part of my DNA to be a teacher. But I think there's a distinction between something that's fair and something that's usury. But when you think about usury, you can apply it to your audience or you can apply it to yourself. In other words, am I being taken advantage of if I give you the keys to the kingdom for pennies? Is that fair to me because of the blood and sweat it cost me to figure those keys out? And so there's a friction that exists. I am not in the business of creating revenue through education. I'm in the business of creating revenue in real estate. And so that's when I shut down the education platform because there was a duality to it that I couldn't align. I couldn't dissolve the conflict. It was either going to be very expensive to you, the audience, or it was not going to be enough money to make it fair for me to spend my time teaching you and telling you what I know. Okay, so somebody was going to get screwed in that equation. And I don't want anybody to get screwed in that equation. So I just decided, well, let's shut down the education stuff. If somebody reaches out and asks a question, I'm going to answer a question, and I'm not going to charge you for it. I'm just going to tell you what I know. But I don't need to be out there trying to make a couple of $100,000 a year cash flow from education or whatever. Like, it's just, so that's maybe more than you bargained for when you put on this path with CFFU and entrepreneurship and everything. But that's how I feel about it. And that's why you don't see me out there going to hooray kind of seminars and mindset this and mindset that, mindset my ass. I don't do that well at all. My perspective is I immigrated in this country without anything. And if you need me on stage to tell you anything about why your mindset should be good because you're in this country and have the opportunities that you have, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Figure out your mindset. You shouldn't, that should never be a thing, period. Because if you've been in other places in the world, that shouldn't be a thing.
I can agree with you. I relate with you because I'm an immigrant to this country as well. And I found the land of opportunity being here offered and available. Not everybody takes advantage of it. On the other hand, most of the people that I met, like good quality people that I'm really good friends with, and we do syndications together, I met them through some of these circles. And as much as I don't want to admit it here, I will. I'm spending most of my time on the hallway lobbying and talking to people. I barely ever get inside the events. When I go to these events, the goal for me there is to network and make sure I get some meaningful connections out of there. So I want to leave with 2 or 3 people after 3 days that really know me, that I can actually trust and call later on. So that's one of the reasons that I'm doing. But you're right. I am not with Cardone because I'm confused if he's a real syndicator or if he's actually making money just by selling courses. I'm really confused. From day one, I'm confused. You and I heard about Cardone a long time ago when Grant Cardone wasn't even the 10x figure that he's today. And we know the story and things behind it. And now I'm like, okay, hold on a second. When was the last time you purchased an asset? 3 years ago? And what are you selling here in this class today? It's a conflict. And that's why I don't.
That side of it doesn't bother me. Look, I'm a violin player by trade, okay? And some of the best violin players were taught by teachers who were not great players. So being an intellectual at something doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a performer in the ring. You can be a very successful coach without being a player in the ring. I'm okay with that. Babe Ruth, I am sure, had a coach. We don't know what his name was.
I agree. I agree.
This is all I'm saying. So that in and of itself is not really an issue for me. And I just think it might just be a personality thing. I'm just not comfortable promising. That's what it is. I'm not comfortable promising anything to anybody. I know how hard this is, and just because I did it doesn't mean you can do it. With CFFU, that cost $200. I could genuinely say, if I could do it, so can you. Because the things we were talking about back then, I could genuinely say, just focus for 30 freaking seconds, and I'll show you how to do it, and you can do it. No question. I can't sit in front of somebody and talk about syndicating a $60 million deal and tell you, yeah, just because I can do it, you can do it. That would just be disingenuous as all hell. I mean, I don't know if you can. Maybe you can. Maybe you can't. But I'm sure as hell not going to take $40,000 from you and tell you that you can.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. And some of the people listening go through that right now. And the crowded space, man, it got even more crowded because now pretty much everybody with 2-3 years of experience has somewhat of a syndication in the mastermind community. And if I'm looking back at the 2-3 years and I'm thinking COVID, I can't quite see the value. I'm like, everybody did well during COVID. Even if you are dumb as a fox, you made a lot of money if you got yourself into a syndication at the right time. Nobody knew what's going on. But if you look deeper, and that's the reason why I like having people like you in my podcast, you've been around syndication, you've been around real estate long enough to witness these cycles before. And you understand it from a totally different bird's eye view than anybody else out there. And I'm not talking this lightly, and I'm not just talking to talk. Ben's been there, and Bigger Pockets is there to witness. And I'm one of the products of Bigger Pockets. When you were talking about the pink house and Brandon was talking about his ugly purple house, and we were just taking notes and looking on those websites to find the houses, and we were dreaming with you at the same time. So you create a whole generation of Bigger Pockets guys, and I'm one of those, that follow through what you guys started. Meanwhile, you guys changed the game. You all moved into syndication, and we are still piggybacking on those houses. I'm like, God damn it, I still have the pink house. Now, it's not making any more money because I'm doing Airbnb. So now let's really quick, I want to point out what really happened here for most of the beginners of 2016, 17, 18. We moved along. We start getting into these sideways models of Airbnb or midterm. Now, midterm is a big thing. Airbnb was the biggest thing. Now they're changing the game into something else. It's not the biggest thing, right? I ended up breaking my back working and making peanuts money, running around. And I only had 4 properties. I didn't have a lot of properties. But between 4 properties, when the guy that was cutting the grass called in sick, I ended up breaking my back. So it wasn't fun. And then when I sold them, I had to pay capital gains on, which is painful as hell. I couldn't find the syndication fast enough. At the time, I wasn't even thinking, Ben. I was thinking, my money, what the hell do I do now? So then here we go. December deadline passed. I'm still paying the money. And I got myself somewhat of an education. And now I'm still scrambling to find my footings because now I'm too busy in my personal life. And here I come with this question that you just answered me in 30 seconds earlier. I want you to go back to it because I know there are at least 9 people watching that you can help. So one of those 9, it's actually me, and I want to hear it once again. So what happens with me as an entrepreneur? Because I own multiple businesses now. Besides the syndication, I just bought an electrical shop, and I want to buy a plumbing business, and I'm like all over the place with businesses, and I have no time. Like I'm in 18-hour days, and when I get home, I feel like just sleeping when I get home. I don't feel like doing anything, and I love my kids and my family to death, but I can't find my footing, man. I'm looking for time management coaches. I'm trying to create more time in a quest and struggle for more money, looks like.
So there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind listening to you. One is a conversation that we could have about focus versus diversification. You are talking about having a number of different businesses going. These businesses are somewhat in different spaces. So you want a plumbing business and an electrical business and a real estate business. So you are diversifying your portfolio, which is good. On the other hand, how focused on either are you?
I do 100% on one at a time, and I forget about the rest. That's exactly what I know.
You got to think that through, because when you're neglecting the others, it's a problem.
I
Right?
pick them up every 3 months. I have a cycle, me personally. But my major is not even in business, the struggle that I'm having. It's more personal. It's like you said, I'm not big enough to put systems in place, and I'm not big enough to have.
Let me break this down into real estate, because I think people will be able to understand better if we put color to it using real estate.
Awesome. Thank you.
So the largest building I bought prior to syndicated capital is a 10-unit building. And the reason, there's a good reason, I didn't buy a 24-unit and a 36-unit and a 64-unit. I didn't do any of that. I got to 10, and from there I went to 100 plus. There's a reason for that. It's simple math. In order to manage things institutionally, you need certain elements. You need certain people in place. You need certain systems in place. And those people and systems have to be able to get paid. And in order to pay them, there has to be enough revenue in the business in order to facilitate the personnel and the systems. It just so happens that if you're going to have 2 people on payroll, and I'm switching back to real estate because that's what I know, you need at least 1 maintenance super, and you need at least 1 person in the leasing office, in the manager's position. You have 2 people. And at today's prices, those 2 salaries are going to set you back a couple of $100,000 a year. So then the only question becomes, how big of an operation in terms of how many units do I need in order to facilitate that burden so that it doesn't stifle the business? Okay? So what you are doing, and this is going back to my earlier comment, is you are square pegging round holing.
I'm taking notes.
You're square pegging round holing. That's what I call it. Square pegging round holing, right? You have a round hole problem and you're trying to shove a square peg into it and it's not working so good. And, why? Because the hole needs to be square or the peg needs to be round. That's just how that works. So in commercial real estate, the ecosystem is you get an institutional property management. They will have a fee that they will charge you monthly. And that fee will pay for their overhead, including your regional that's going to be responsible for you, including your marketing design, your this and that and the other. Okay, I'm talking about Gray Star MEB. I'm talking about big boys, how the institutional guys work, right? In addition to that, they're going to pass costs to you. In addition to that, all of the payroll for all of the on-site personnel, all of the paper and the equipment and all of the stocking of the maintenance room and all of the everything, right? You're going to have admin costs associated with it. You're going to have payroll costs associated with it, and you're going to have marketing costs associated with it. And in order to be able to pay for all of those costs and all of those people, you're going to need to be a certain size. Period. Otherwise, you are trying to square peg round hole. That's the best way I know to describe it.
I appreciate
it. You are in a situation right now where you're too big to be small, but too small to be big. That's a horrible place to be in. It's tough. It's really tough. Do your next deal at over 100 units, and you'll find out that it works a little bit differently, and you regain some of your time and some of your sanity.
Yeah, right now I'm going bananas. I agree. I think that's the most important part that I miss about my day. Ben, I thank you so much for your time. I don't want to hold you any longer. I know you're a busy man. You're starting this new project very quickly. And yes, I appreciate the time that you gave me. I'm still on the back burner. I'm still going to follow you around. I'm still going to watch these deals. If I can, I'm going to make some recommendations along the way. I thank you so much for being so open and honest with me all the time along these years. And I think this is one of the reasons that I'm not going away. Because every time I hear anything, even on Facebook, when I watch you, your opinions are a little bit different, I'll put it that way, than the normal people that I watch too. They're not the normal gurus. Like, you're going to say it as it is. And that's why I wanted to call you up here.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you. It was a pleasure to join you. Pleasure to have a conversation. We can do this again. This was fun. If you'd like to, if there's a benefit to your audience. Yeah, I enjoy helping whenever I can. It just can't come at a detriment to my family or my time and my business and things of that nature. It's not about the money's not worth it. It's a function of a respectful exchange of ideas, and I'm always open to that. Always open to that.
Thank you so much. Yes, if you have future time slots for me, I'm going to book you ahead for the next 10 years. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you so much.
Take care, man. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day and a great weekend. Thank you.
Bye-bye.